List with Elizabeth show, ready to go live in 3, 2.
When you think selling and buying a home,
when I think real estate, I think List with Elizabeth.
Elizabeth Klein.
Elizabeth and Klein. And here is the host of the List with Elizabeth show, Elizabeth Klein.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back again for another episode of the List with Elizabeth show. As you know, I am Elizabeth Ann Klein, host of your show, List with Elizabeth. I'm excited to have you all here today. Thank you for tuning in time and time again. Big thank you to everyone who sends comments. I am getting comments from around the world. We just had one from Indonesia. So a big shout out to my mom and her little man who's watching us over in Indonesia. Hopefully some of this information is somehow useful. And if nothing else, maybe I'm entertaining. I don't know. But I thought that was an amazing comment to get. Thank you so much for writing into the show. We really appreciate that. If you are listening to this show from Northern Virginia and you ever need help buying or selling a home, please feel free to give me a call. I am a real estate specialist in Northern Virginia, helping buyers buy and sellers sell residential real estate. If you are outside of Northern Virginia, but within the United States of America, and you need a good agent in your area, please feel free to reach out to me. I will connect you with 2 to 3 excellent agents in your area that can guide you professionally, give you the support that you need and the guidance that you're looking for, and make sure you are on the right track. The big part of this is who am I partnered with and how are they going to coach me through this process and help me through this process. If you love the show, please subscribe, please like, please share, please comment, do all that good stuff so we can keep more people coming in and getting the word spread about residential real estate. All right. So again, thank you so much for being here today. Sometimes when I work with sellers, they are so hyper-focused on getting the home ready for sale. And then a lot of times, especially in our market where we work, the turnaround time between going active on the market and going under contract is very quick. So probably 1 week or less. And then all of a sudden, we have a ratified contract. And now my sellers are going, wait, now what happens? Because again, they've been so focused on the prep work and the sale component and going under contract. We now come to a point in the process where they didn't really give it much thought before it happens. So today we're going to talk through what actually happens after you go under contract from a seller's perspective and how someone like what's called a transaction coordinator steps in when you're working with me and helps with sellers from this point forward. So today we're going to speak with Lane Selemi. She is a fantastic transaction coordinator. She runs her own company called Optimum Transactions, and we're going to have her chat with us today a little bit about how she gets involved in the process and what we can expect from a transaction coordinator. There she is. Hello, Lane. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Good. Sweetest thing.
Happy to be.
I'm so thankful to have you in my professional life. So thank you for being on the show. I know you're very, very busy. And Lane, if you just want to start by just telling us who is Lane, who are you, and tell us a little bit about your company, Optimum Transactions, and then we'll get into it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so first, my most important job is being a mom of 4 and a wife to my amazing husband, Arturo. 4. Yeah.
I know.
So very, very busy. Very busy. They keep us on our toes for sure, but it's full of joy. And about 2 years ago, I started my own TC business, transaction coordination, called Optimum Transactions. And I love to help agents and their clients get through the process from, listing or shopping around to closing really seamlessly and reducing as much stress for all parties as possible.
Perfect. That in a nutshell. And sometimes, clients don't even realize what's happening behind the scenes. They don't realize who's doing what. So we're just going to kind of give a little roadmap today of how transaction coordinators can help. They may or may not do all of these steps. It just depends on each transaction. But let's start here with our first slide. So again, we're going to talk about the point where sellers now go under contract. Okay. So I'm finishing the negotiation, wrapping up all the details on the contract, and boom, now we're ratified. So at this point in time, I can hand the contract over to Lane, and she's going to start some of her process in terms of managing paperwork and deadlines. Lane, do you want to speak to that just a little bit?
Yeah, well, you mentioned how sellers often don't know what happens in the background, and that's one of my biggest goals, is that they don't need to know a lot of the back end process, and they don't need to be bothered with small details that don't affect the contract, the terms, but there's so much. There's so many people to communicate with. There's title companies, which often have multiple people that within their organization that you need to be in contact with for different things. There's lenders, and the same thing with lenders. They've got assistants and processors and underwriting, and there's just so many people. And then the agents on the other side might have a TC or an assistant or a mentor, someone else that's, looped into the process. And it can be really overwhelming for sellers when they're trying to sell their home, which is a very personal and big financial decision. And my job is to take so much of that off of the seller's plate, but also off of the agent's plate as well. So making sure that, we're tracking contingency deadlines, that we're one step at least ahead of the game and responding appropriately and in a timely manner so that there's time for things to get done and keep the process on track for an on-time closing date.
Yeah, so really at this point, a lot of times once I send the contract over to Lane, by the next day, I'm getting several emails, right? One is, okay, here's all the people, like she was saying, included in the transaction. Here's the title company we're using, and here's the 3 points of contact. Here's the buyer's title company, and here's their 2 points of contact. Here's the lender, here's their 3 points of contact. So she's keeping everything organized and streamlined so that if 2 weeks down the road, I now have a question I need to go back and ask the lender, I can easily reference that kind of master guide, if you will, and say, okay, here are the 3 people at the lender I need to bounce back to. So keeping everything organized is a big part of it. Also, just on the back end, getting that paperwork into the brokerage, right? Back to the office and putting it in the format it needs to be in. If you want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so much of that doesn't matter to the sellers, right? They don't care. They don't need to care about brokerage compliance as long as we're doing our jobs. But that is a huge time saver for agents, that they don't have to sit in front of a computer and put documents in the right places where they need to go, and making sure everything is signed by all parties and initialed by all parties. And that's one of my favorite parts of the job, is just keeping those documents organized and double checking them, triple checking them for compliance, and making sure our clients are protected.
Yeah. So for example, sometimes, the contract may be with addendums, it may be 26 pages long, and there might be a missing initial on one page. On page 16, someone of the 6 initials that needed to get on there, only 5 got on there. And so Lane will sit there and comb through each and every page of that contract and make sure every single initial is where it needs to be, every single signature is where it needs to be. Things, again, that, as an agent, I don't need to sit there and comb through all of that. That's back end stuff, that's admin stuff, cleanup stuff. So Lane stepping in and doing all of that.
And those things are easy to miss when you're looking, especially when you're signing as a seller or a buyer, and you're clicking through really quickly. That process moves, and you may not realize that you missed it. But also, as agents and lenders and title companies, you're looking at the same documents over and over and over again, and it's easy to miss, when 1 out of 6 initials are missing. But it can be a game changer as well. If there's a missing initial, that can change the entire outcome of the contract.
And sometimes it's more of an administrative thing. We'd like to have it here just because it looks neat and tidy, but it's not going to affect the fact that we're under contract or we're not under contract. So again, knowing what are the important things that have to be there, if we're missing something, cleaning it up, that type of thing. Okay. And then the other thing that happens at this point is usually the title company, hopefully there's one, but sometimes there's 2. So the buyers can have their own title company. The sellers can have their own title company. So Lane, what do you have to do to get them on board?
So I live in my email inbox all day, and
I don't see you
communicate.
much. That's where you're living. Okay.
Well, for one, I like to have written records of everything, right? But also, it's the easiest way to get a message across and not have to track somebody down. Phone calls are great, but things can get lost in translation. And if it's not written down, you may forget what was said. So I'm constantly emailing title companies, providing contact information for our clients so that they can get the appropriate disclosures and information from them. And I just keep things moving smoothly. So making sure that not only are things getting sent to the sellers, but the sellers are responding and getting things back to the title company, because they've got a whole load of work that they've got to do with preparing deeds and title searches and documents to get ready for closing. So it's a lot of connecting the right people at the right time and making sure that everyone's doing their individual job and nothing else.
Usually also at this point in time, I will connect my clients on a text string with Lane, because usually before this point in time, it's just the clients and I texting back and forth. Again, house prep, negotiation, contracts. Now I'm going to loop her into the text string and to all email correspondence moving forward. So the clients now have added an extension of me onto their end of communication as well. Okay, let's go to the second slide, because this kind of ties into what we were just saying, keeping communication flowing. So one of the things that I have noticed, most title companies have online portals where the contract, once they get a new contract sent over to them, they're going to open something possibly on what's called Qualia, which is a secured portal where emails can go back and forth between the title company and whoever else is involved. Clients, the lender, etc. Lane as the TC, me as the agent. So even just making sure Qualia is open, right, and all the emails are in there correctly, that's something that you're going to do on the communication end. Yes?
Yes, I do that. And I can track at the beginning, there's tasks that get sent out to clients to, just confirm personal information, upload your photo ID, provide mortgage payoff. Just not a lot, but there are a few things that have to get done pretty much immediately after ratification so that the title company can do their job. And I check to make sure that, email addresses got put in correctly so that they're actually receiving these messages, checking with the sellers, did it go to spam? And also just making sure that they get completed in time, because everybody is relying on everybody else to do their job. And a lot of time it's a domino effect. So if someone doesn't do something, any of the parties involved, then a lot of other people are waiting on the next step before that can get done.
Right. And do you have any examples of this that you can think of that maybe, because I can think of some, sometimes clients aren't really checking their email, and, there's 3 or 4 emails in there from Qualia that say, click here to open your file, like scan in your ID, do this, do that. And again, these are things that as an agent, I don't see these emails. This isn't something, this is between the title company and the client. So this is where the TC is going to step in and manage that. And there's other pieces between the client and the lender. This is private financial information. This is not stuff I'm looped in on, or I should be looped in on. Your agent doesn't need to know your credit score or, see your pay stub. So these types of things, Lane is going to step in and micromanage from above and say, okay, hey, Mr. Lender, and hey, Mr. Client, are you guys talking? Is the information going back and forth?
Yeah.
Right. You send in your pay stubs, you send in your copy of your ID or whatever it is.
And private. So I also don't need to know your credit score. I don't need to know your financial situation or your copy of your photo ID. But these other people that are doing the fiduciary jobs they do. And so it's just my job to make sure that everyone is communicating with the appropriate party at the right time. And there have been times where settlements got delayed because those sellers didn't log in to complete those tasks. And it was something as simple as providing, your loan number for your mortgage. But it takes time for the title company to get the authorization to order that payoff, and then for the bank to respond to get the payoff back to them so they know what they're taking out of the proceeds of the home. And I've seen several settlements get delayed. So everyone's waiting for the sale of the home, which was, something as simple as typing in a number into an online portal. So it's really nice to have another set of eyes, another person that's tracking that process and making sure everyone's checking their boxes.
Yes. That's amazing. And I love when I open my inbox and I see just a one sentence from Lane. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, don't forget to upload that ID. Like, I know she's on it. She's tracking it. She's watching everything that needs to go down. And it doesn't have to be a big task, but every little task is important because once you go under contract, your closing date is part of that contract. It shows our closing date, and it's usually about 30 days. So a lot of stuff has to happen in that 30-day time period. And just like Lane was saying, one thing gets missed, then it's a domino effect. And now we have a potential delayed settlement and some upset potential buyers or sellers. So,
yeah.
Alrighty, let's move on to scheduling and logistics. So talk a little bit about the big things that you usually help with scheduling in terms of the seller side of things.
Yes. So sellers were usually on the receiving end of appointment requests for inspections and appraisals and walkthroughs. And there are multiple inspections that often happen, and they are done with several different inspectors. So it doesn't all happen on the same day. So that text string is really helpful because it helps me get a quick answer. When I get a inquiry from, a termite inspector or home inspector, can we do the inspection on X date at X time, I can quickly check with the sellers, does this work for you? Provide the recommendations. We recommend that you're not home. Does this work with your schedule and your family? And I can get back to the other party pretty quickly because inspections book up quick. And if you're not responding quickly and confirming that time works for you, then you might be inconvenienced by having to rearrange your schedule, or the buyers are going to be inconvenienced by having to extend the settlement or the home inspection contingency in order to get that inspection done with the inspector of their choice. So it's a lot of coordination of everybody's schedules and trying to keep things as convenient for all parties as possible, while also monitoring the deadlines of the contract to make sure things are getting done on that end as well. So it's a lot of communication back and forth, a lot of balancing, and keeping everybody happy.
Just keep us happy, Lane. Just keep everybody happy. That's all you have to do, okay? The world's on your shoulders. Yeah, so not only do you have a home inspector potentially to work on the schedule, you have like you said, a termite inspector. Sometimes there's a radon pickup that happens after the home inspection. There's an appraiser that usually has to go out as well, getting them on the books. Sometimes I'll see Lane proactively send an email that says, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer's agent, did your clients order a survey? If so, I want to alert our sellers that someone will probably be walking around their backyard and I don't want them to be startled. That happens all the time.
All the time. And I don't know that a lot of TCs do that because the survey is so, it's just the property drawing, right, of your boundaries, and nobody needs to enter the home. And I think a lot of people don't take that seriously, but as a homeowner and a mom of myself, if I saw someone walking around in my yard and putting stakes in the ground, I would be on high alert and that would startle me. And I don't want that for our clients. So I always make sure that I'm trying to be ahead of the game and getting them, alerts if possible.
I can't tell you how many times in the past, actually before I started working with you, that step was overlooked. And I had a frantic phone call of, Elizabeth, there's some guy in my yard. He parked really close by and now he's walking the side. Now he's walking in the back. Do you know who this is? Like, what's going on? And they're scared and they're startled and rightfully so. And it just turns out, this is part of the process. Even though I told them up front, this would happen. By the time it happens, they forgot. There's a lot in their mind. They're packing, they're signing documents, they're still trying to work, and everything's happening at one time. So we need to remember, our clients' lives don't stop. They don't hyper focus on this contract for 30 days. This is background noise of, I have to deal with this. I have to deal with this. So someone like Lane is going to come in and make sure only the steps they really need to be focusing on, they're focusing on. Anything they need to know as a proactive reminder or heads up, they're getting to know that. Even with the home inspections, I remember there was one time the buyer's agent totally did not tell us when they were going out for home inspection. And they just showed up at the client's door. And of course, the client was showering And of
Oh.
course, they used Central Lock and just let themselves in, and it was a
Oh.
fiasco.
Yeah, I've heard
Um,
a lot of stories. You know,
Yeah.
I don't show properties. I'm behind the computer, not out in the field like you guys. But I've heard of a lot of showing things that happen like that as well, where people are
Yeah.
not alerted of things, and
Yeah.
having an extra person keep eyes on the
Yeah. So like
things going on.
Lane is going to proactively reach out to that buyer's agent and say, hey, when are you going for home inspection? We want to make sure it's on the schedule. We want to make sure the sellers clear the time and vacate the home. You know, for agents that don't use a transaction coordinator, I don't know how you're ever doing a service to your clients, because there is so many ins and outs to this. And unless, like Lane said, you're sitting at your computer, just hyper focused on this end of things, you can't really be an agent and do that. You can't do
Right.
both. You're either doing agent work or you're doing TC work. So I definitely recommend that, you know, anyone out there who's looking at realtors, make sure you're choosing someone who uses transaction coordinators to make your life easier and the whole process
Right.
simpler.
Right. Absolutely.
Okay, let's move on to the next slide here. I love this one. Problem solving and compliance. Now, let me just back up for a minute. So as your agent, if I'm your listing agent, any problem solving that needs to be done that affects your contract, your terms, your negotiation, I am doing that. We're talking about other stuff. So for example, a lot of times I see out of the goodness of everyone's heart, the sellers want to potentially convey their pool table, or they want to know if the buyers would like their sofa or their XYZ, right? So
Right.
this is where Lane is going to pick up the ball. I don't need to be involved in, hey, would you like my sofa? Email, wait for the email back. Oh, maybe. Well, what size is it? Oh, well, I don't know. Let me measure. Email back. Oh, well, I meant the depth, not the height. Oh,
Right.
so then it's like, I don't know, 30 emails back and forth just to get
easy.
information. Easy. Tell us a little bit
Easy.
about these types of things that you're able to step in and help with.
So I see this from a convenience factor, but also I've also seen this kind of conversation come up with contracts as well. So if a listing agent or seller knows ahead of time when they're in the active listing process or pre-marketing process, that before you have a contract, that they know that you're not going to take their couch or their exercise equipment or what have you with them when they move, they can put it in the conveyances. Well, those get added into the contract that they do convey to the buyer. And sometimes we'll have lenders, you know, pop up later like, oh, we need to make sure that there's an addendum stating that these are free of charge and they don't have an effect on the property value. So that's one way contractually that a transaction coordinator can step in and make sure that all of those things are taken care of ahead of time before the lender even asks. But then just the convenience as people are packing and getting ready to move and you're sorting through stuff. When we just moved ourselves, and I've always had empathy for our clients that are buying and selling and in that process. But man, what a reminder it was as you start the packing process and you're purging. And then as you get closer to move date, you're like, okay, everything's going in a box. And those big things like couches and exercise equipment or playground equipment that wasn't necessarily negotiated upon at ratification big ticket items that, that's back and forth, like what color is it? Where's it from? What's the quality? What's the measurements? And sometimes we have it too, where they're willing to leave it for the buyers, but they do want to be compensated for it. And so there's a lot of negotiations financially, clearly not as big as the purchase of the house, but, we want to sell our couch for $500. Do the buyers want it? And it takes some time to go back and forth with, deciding on a price, or do we accept it? Do we like it? And getting that back to the other party. And it's just not a good use of an agent's time, to be totally honest.
Other things like scheduling conflicts when it comes to settlement. So let's say Lane proactively schedules the buyers to close February 19th at 4 p.m. And then all of a sudden they say, oh, my wife's work schedule changed. We now need to change this. Well, the title company doesn't have an opening. And now so just all the back and forths that can happen. I can't even tell you how many could happen because it's unlimited, right? It's an infinite amount of things. And we learn something new on each and every transaction in terms of that, right? Yeah. So
And
scheduling.
it's nice to,
Mhm.
it keeps things simple when you, because I work with a lot of agents, I've worked with a lot of title companies and a lot of lenders in this area. I know ahead of time, if this title company fills up really fast for settlements, we need to schedule early and we need to check in closer to that time. Does that time still work for you? Do we need to rearrange? Are you leaving time, travel time to get to and from? So there's a lot of things that go into scheduling logistics and, cleaning up when things have to be rescheduled.
What's one of the most standout moments as a TC you've had in terms of something that popped up unexpected that like you were like, I can't even believe I'm dealing with this. Like, how, like, is there anything that comes to
Wow,
mind that's
that's a
like
good question.
sort of,
So I think I block some of them out,
right?
because they get to be so dramatic. But one of the biggest ones was one of yours, not that long ago, where we were dealing with a trust and they were selling the second property belonging to the trust. And there's something came back on the title search and the signers of the contract they had to take some extra steps to prove that they were legally authorized signers for that property. And there were several extra steps that they needed to do. And we did have to get an attorney involved. And when we went back, I had some questions, like we just closed a property owned by the same trust with a different title company who did not mention any of this. So it was a big eye-opening, who you work with matters, who you're, and not just your agent, but also your title company, your lender. Are they all doing the right thing and crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's and doing all of their homework to make sure that this is a legitimate sale to the conclusion of this?
Yeah, I think you probably had an extra 1,000 emails on that one, just back and I mean, that was so tangled and messy. I mean, I just remember watching all of these emails go down and thinking, thank God I have a TC, because it would have completely consumed my time.
Yeah.
To get that done.
And it's scary. So having somebody else on the front lines who's kind of vetting and prioritizing what's urgent and what's not, what's super important and what can be handled later is helpful.
Okay, great. And let's move on to the last slide here. And I think we kind of touched on some of this, just really just reducing the stress, pulling the stress out of the transaction for not only me, but us more specifically for our clients. I mean, I think sometimes at the end of the day, my clients reach out to me and they go, Lane was fantastic, and you are, and you really do make a difference. Because like you said, you can be behind your computer all day watching for requests to come in, watching for things to happen. Whereas as an agent, I'm not at my computer all day. I'm in and out constantly on appointments. I'm in the car when I'm driving. I can't see things in real time. I shouldn't be reading things in real time, and I don't.
Right.
And I do wear my seatbelt. But anyway, it just having that person, that eyes and ears that can be an extension of me behind the computer and immediately jumping on things, because a lot of times, again, this is a very stressful period of time for the sellers. Like you said, they're packing, they're purging, they're working, they have kids, they're in and out as well all day. So when something's on their mind, they don't necessarily want to wait overnight or longer for a response, right? Or sometimes we don't have the luxury of time. And that's where you can come in and say, yep, got it, I'm on it. And so those are so many of your emails. I'm on it. I got it. Just letting them know we hear you, we're working on it, stay tuned.
Yeah.
So for me, that's been very helpful as an agent, having you on board. Yeah.
That's my goal. You said that I was an extension of you. And that is really truly how I see myself in my role, is an extension of the agent and their entire business. So when you should be out at appointments, meeting people, showing homes, getting more buyers and sellers to help reach their goals financially. And you can't do that in front of a computer. So I can be that point of contact and I've seen, I'm sure I haven't seen it all because we, like you said, we learn something new every time, but I've seen a lot. And so when sellers have questions, I can help answer them more quickly and ease that stress. Things that may seem out of tune or out of ordinary for someone who doesn't do this day in and day out can be really scary. But for me, it's like, oh, that, yeah, sounds scary, but it's not. This is how it's going to work. Not a big deal. And also, sometimes things happen that upset people, like your example about the survey, being surprised, just having someone who's able to quickly answer, it's just a surveyor. They don't need to enter your home. It's totally normal. They should have given you a heads up, but that doesn't always happen. We apologize, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not just the scary parts, but also all that back end stuff. Like sellers don't need to see the contract go to the title company, and they don't need to see it to go to the other agent. And they just need to focus on themselves and what their responsibilities are throughout this process, which we try to make that as simple as possible. If it's something that I can do on the seller's behalf, I will do it. A lot of title companies will call the sellers and to try to schedule settlement, but a phone call in the middle of your workday or in the middle of dinner can be very inconvenient. So if I can get that information and their preferences ahead of time and handle it behind the scenes and just shoot them a confirmation email, like, here's where you need to be at this time on this day, I think it makes the process very smooth and seamless. And there are a lot of emergencies that can happen in the back end that they probably are never aware of. And I hope that that's the case, that things are smooth.
Yes. I always say a bomb goes off in every deal. Sometimes a little tiny one. Sometimes it's a really big one. But if you don't need to know about it, it's better that way. We just let us handle it on the back end and move forward. Okay, Lane, any final closing thoughts? Because I think we covered a lot today and gave people a good overview of how you can help when there's a seller involved. Go ahead.
I think we covered a lot. I could talk about contracts and things like this all day. So if sellers have questions, please reach out. If agents are looking for a TC, I'd love to talk about how I could support you. And this was fun. Thanks for having me.
Great. And everyone saw her contact information there on the screen. Please reach out. Lane is phenomenal. She's also a licensed realtor. So just in case she needs to run out and grab something at a house or do something like that, she can access Central Lock and all those good things. So, all right. Thank you everyone again for joining in on another episode of List with Elizabeth. Hopefully you guys have a wonderful day. I hope you learned a lot today about transaction coordinators, TCs, as we call them in the business. Again, if you need any help in Northern Virginia, please feel free to reach out to me anytime, 703-829-LIST, or check out my website at listwithelizabeth.com. See you guys on the next episode. Thank you for tuning in.
When you're ready to